Can I have everyone's attention, please? We're going to begin our ceremony now. Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, and distinguished inductees, welcome to Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum, and welcome to today's 2023 Joesph A. Dugan Jr. Hall of Valor induction ceremony. We will begin today's ceremony with the posting of the colors by Vietnam Veterans Incorporated Honor Guard led by Mr. Robert Butch Burke. This will be followed by our national anthem, and finally, Reverend Mike Werschmidt of Shepherd's Heart Fellowship will conduct the invocation. So I ask you now to make sure your phones are silenced. Gentlemen, remove your hats. And remember, veterans, during the national anthem, you are permitted to render the hand salute during the national anthem. Please rise and remain standing for our colors, the national anthem, and the invocation. Honor Guard, post the colors.
Please join me in prayer. Almighty God, we come to you this day to remember and to honor those who have served this great nation and those who will be inducted into the Soldiers and Sailors Joesph A. Dugan Jr. Hall of Valor. O Judge of the nations, we remember before you with grateful hearts these heroes who in the day of decision ventured much for the liberties we now enjoy. We thank you that these men and women, when the time came to serve true freedom, they answered the call to lay down their lives for truth. We commend our nation to your merciful care. Being guided by your providence, we may dwell secure in your peace. Grant to all who lead our country wisdom and strength to know and to do your will. We ask you to watch over all the men and women of our armed forces at home and abroad. We especially remember today those in our military serving overseas. Defend them day by day with your heavenly grace. Strengthen them in their trials and give them great courage to face the perils before them. Lord, we also remember all the veterans who have served in our military. We especially pray for those veterans who are sick, those that are dying, and those without homes. We pray for their healing. We thank you for their service to our country. We also remember the families of those who have served and those who are now serving. We especially remember our Gold Star mothers, Gold Star wives, and all the families of loved ones lost in war. Lord, we will continue to bring before you those MIAs and POWs who have not yet come home. We cry out to you to bring them home. Lord, we will not forget them. We thank you for this great Hall of Valor and all that it represents. May you continue to bless this great memorial hall and museum. Be present, O Lord, during this ceremony and throughout this day. We thank you that your mercies are eternal. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, VVI and Reverend Mike. My name is John McCabe, and I am the CEO and president of Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum Trust, Incorporated. And along with my entire staff, we have the honor and privilege to come here and work every day. Although with the fallout of COVID, we still haven't returned completely to all being here. So, but I still am here in spirit most of the days. Today we have the very special honor and privilege to be part of this annual celebration, this induction ceremony in which we will recognize 4 ordinary veterans who have done extraordinary deeds. Before I begin, I have a couple of comments I'd like to make. One is just a bit of background on the fact that we are being seen virtually by our virtual audience. This began well, back when COVID started in 2020, our Hall of Valor became one of the very first casualties of the many casualties of programs and events we had to cancel as a result of the pandemic. But out of that crisis, we were grateful that our nonprofit rebounded, and we adjusted and amended our approach to this and many of our other annual events and special programs. And one of those adjustments we made is the ability to create an online virtual presence, enabling us to reach the community while maintaining those restrictions that so harshly were applied to all of us, but needed. And I'm grateful to our staff for the initiative it took to achieve those virtual capabilities, especially with our limited budget, and because now we are prepared to face any kind of similar restrictions that are put in place again in the future for whatever reason. So welcome everyone who's watching us virtually, online, and we welcome back those viewers that we've had from the past couple of years. I also want to make a comment about how appropriate it is that we have our Vietnam veteran and incorporated veterans here today as our honor guard, as they are every year. Many of those present today, and just like many of their fellow veterans from Vietnam, they likely didn't get a single day of recognition when they returned home. But now, later this week, they will receive what has become an annual day of recognition on Wednesday, March 29th, which is the Vietnam Veteran War Veterans Day. So before we go any further, for the veterans we have here and all the Vietnam veterans, I'd like to thank them for their sacrifice and their service. Thank you. And one final note, this is the 60th anniversary of the Hall of Valor. This is a special event today. So it's appropriate that I also insert a comment here about one of our former Hall of Valor inductees, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this. The first induction ceremony occurred on Tuesday, October 29th of 1963. And what a great year that was, and one that I will never forget because it's my birth year. So according to our records and our historian, the very first or a few of the members of that first class were Allegheny County employees. In 1949, a young Wilkinsburg resident named Livingston Morris Johnstone graduated from Howard University. He also received a U.S. Air Force ROTC commission as a second lieutenant, and he was called to active duty shortly thereafter. And as a navigator and radar bombardier, Lieutenant Johnstone flew 58 combat missions in the Korean War, earning the Distinguished Flying Cross among other medals before he was discharged in 1954. Then he returned to Wilkinsburg. In 1962, Attorney Johnstone became the Allegheny County employee as an assistant county solicitor. So yes, if you're following the timeline here, and with his receiving the Distinguished Flying Cross, you may have guessed that Attorney Livingston Johnson was among the charter members of the Hall of Valor in 1963. Of course, there were other members in the inaugural induction class, but we wanted to share this bit of information about this inductee, this Hall of Valor inductee, because this retired judge of the Commonwealth Court of Allegheny County, the Common Police Court of Allegheny County, I saw an announcement just a little bit ago, a few weeks ago, that he died last month in February at the age of 95. And he was here several years ago, and I had a chance to meet him, and we actually found his plaque in our Hall of Valor, and I should have had my picture taken with him in front of the touchscreen kiosk, because it's just not often did you get to actually meet the veterans that we are inducting. And I'm sure that first ceremony was slightly different than what we are doing today in its structure. And those early ceremonies likely had many of the inductees, as I said, present in the room, unlike those later years when we really didn't get to meet these veterans. So many have already passed on. So although rare, we are fortunate today to have one of the inductees with us today. So with that, let's begin our ceremony so we can meet him and honor the rest of our 2023 class members. So this structure that we are in today, referred to by many names, good names, just variations of Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum. It has stood as a memorial honoring and remembering our military veterans since it first opened its doors in October of 1910, 113 years ago. It was built by Allegheny County in honor of Civil War veterans from right here in Allegheny County. But over the years, Soldiers and Sailors has evolved into really the only memorial of its kind in this country because of who we honor, a unique memorial that honors all Pennsylvanians for their service members from all conflicts and wars and eras, all branches of service, and all military statuses, whether active, reserve, or National Guard, not just a specific branch of service or war. In 1998, when this grand memorial was in dire need of repairs and improvements, funding, and basically an identity of its purpose, our own 501c3 nonprofit company was formed and became known as Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum Trust Incorporated. And in 2000, we were granted both the responsibility and the privilege to revive the importance of this facility and raise the necessary funding needed to operate, maintain, and improve the memorial and museum, and to establish and create educational and veteran programs that honor and remember our military veterans. So it is important to note that our organization is not part of the county, it's not part of the University of Pittsburgh, or any other part of a larger or separate entity. Our nonprofit was created in order to restore life into this grand structure, and we do that all on our own, while preparing it to continue on for our mission for many, many years and more generations of veterans to come. We are here, as I said, our staff every day working to make sure that happens. So with that said, and on behalf of Soldiers and Sailors, our company, our staff, our board of directors, and all the veterans that we honor and recognize every day, I'd like to thank you today for joining us for one of the, if not the most important tribute programs that we have, the Joesph A. Dugan Jr. Hall of Valor Induction Ceremony. Although Soldiers and Sailors opened in 1910 and our nonprofit took the reins in 2000, the Hall of Valor began in 1963, 60 years ago. And for the first time, Allegheny County recognized veterans, as I said, mainly from this county. Since then, the Hall of Valor recognition has expanded, first to neighboring counties, then Western PA. Then about a decade ago, we recognized the need to open the program to all veterans from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And then in 2006, what was simply known as the Hall of Valor then changed its name to the Joesph A. Dugan Jr. Hall of Valor. It was named after the untimely passing of Joe Dugan, the first president of our nonprofit company. And since 1963, and then after today, we'll have 773 inductees into our Hall of Valor. One important topic that I'd like to share is the low number we have today. Out of all the years that I've been associated, we've had as many as close to 25 inductees, and today we're down to 4. So this is a special day for all of us because this may be the last induction ceremony that is structured this way. It won't be the last ceremony, but possibly just the way that we are structuring it this way. And that's another reason why today and this year is so special. Our current structure has remained this way, as I said, for about 15 years. And during the ceremony, usually a VIP joins me in reading the citations that you're about to hear. And we bounce back and forth between myself and whoever's joining us or joining me. And it's usually a VIP from the veteran community or just the community at large. So this year, it's just me. Now further back, and the inductees were actually announced by someone of their choosing, and then they had a chance to make comments, the inductees themselves. And oftentimes, as you can imagine, maybe with 25 inductees, that can lead to a pretty long ceremony. So this year, because we only have 4, and because we're starting to see a need to make some changes, we are inviting our inductees this afternoon to share their comments with us. The last few years, we've actually given them a chance during our informal luncheon that we have following this event. But today, we're going to change it up a bit and allow them to speak during the ceremony. I understand some of them might be reluctant to do so. At least I thought so until I was informed that one inductee, I may have to pull the microphone away from him, so I may give a little tap when he's up so we all know if we have to pull the hook out and give him a yank. Now, another reason why I couldn't provide, or why today I can provide this more lengthy and informative, and I feel important, introduction than usual, we have more time to deal with since we only have 4. But the main factor that allows me to talk a bit more is that usually on this day, my wife shares her beautiful voice with us when she performs a national anthem. And this is the first time in 15 years she hasn't been able to do that. So without her being here, I have no one to give me that yank and pull me off the stage. So we're hoping after today, our staff will get together and we will be back next year with even a more, I don't want to say more, there's nothing more you can do than honor these veterans and what they do for us. But utilizing the assets that we have and taking the atmosphere and the current environment that we have and making sure that this day is known by the entire community, that this auditorium possibly can be full. It is open to the public, which it always wasn't open to the public before and find a way to make this special program stand out as one of the most important days out of the year for our veterans, especially here in Pittsburgh. So with that said, and on behalf of soldiers and sailors and our staff, and I already said that and I forgot to turn my page. I want to, see, this is what happens when I get a little bit more time and I start deciding what I want to talk about. I have about I'm organized, but I have 3 different pages, or 3 different stacks of papers up here, making sure that I say what I want to say. So now one of the most important elements of my opening comments, I want everyone here to know what the Hall of Valor is and what this induction ceremony means. So I want to talk about the program's criteria, which some of you may know. Some of you were involved in finding the awards that, the medals that got these veterans here on our stage, and know what you had to go through for the Hall of Valor application to be approved. So for a nominee to qualify for the induction into the Hall of Valor, a service member must have a significant connection to Pennsylvania, usually established by living here before they entered the service or having been honorably discharged, or if not currently serving, and most importantly, living here after they've been discharged. They have to have received one of the following medals for an act of valor: the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Navy Cross, the Air Force Cross, or in some rare cases, during combat-related conduct, we include the Soldier's Medal, the Airman Medal, the Navy and Marine Corps Medal, and the Coast Guard Medal. Now, the Hall of Valor itself is actually a room located here in our memorial. And if you did, I'm not sure what time everyone got here, if you had time to see it. If you hadn't, before you leave this today, I'd like you to be sure to stop in and see it. It is basically directly to my left, your right, facing me in the far corner, the front corner of our building. So if you go out in the hall and walk all the way to the end and make a right, you will see the Hall of Valor. And when you walk in, you will basically notice that the room is really nothing more than plaques that are on the wall. It is that simple of a memorial that we have for these specific veterans. But those plaques contain the citations of what those veterans did to be awarded those medals. So on the walls right now, you see Medal of Honor winners. As I said, 773 members in our Hall of Valor. We can't fit them all in there anymore, and at one time they were. So we use the walls of the Hall of Valor to display any inductee that has received the Medal of Honor. And then there's the far wall, there is a small stage. If you walk up on that stage, you will see the 2021 and 2022 plaques. That is last year's and the year before induction class. And after today, we will replace the 2021 induction class with today's class. So again, I encourage you to visit the Hall of Valor before you leave today. Now, each presentation, when it is read, it will include the inductee's name and rank, branch of service, theater of operation, date of their action, and the county or counties where they are from, and which represents their connection to Pennsylvania. This will also be followed by the narrative that is taken from the official military citation. Although sometimes for this citation, we couldn't find the citation, or it couldn't be found when the application was submitted. So in those cases, the narrative was recreated by newspaper articles or official military reports. This presentation will be in alphabetical order, and each plaque will be presented today by the Vietnam Veteran Incorporated Honor Guard. So one thing we ask, if you can, or normally I ask if you can, to hold your applause until the entire citation narrative has been read and we finish the entire program. But today there's no reason with our smaller crowd. After I read the citation, feel free to show your appreciation. Now remind you, after I read the citation, we also will then have the service member or their representative here today speak a few words. So with that, I will begin with the first citation. And thank you for your patience in getting through my little lecture today. Specialist for Henry Caruso, Jr. United States Army, Vietnam, July 2nd, 1966, Westmoreland County, Allegheny County. Awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action on 7 July 1966. Specialist Caruso's unit was in a perimeter defense in Loc Ninh province when it was attacked by a Viet Cong battalion. The insurgents assaulted his company's position with small arms, automatic weapons, grenades, and mortars. Specialist Caruso and his assistant countered with bursts from their machine gun to the left and then launched a barrage of grenades to their right. Then they switched the positions of the two weapons to start the process over again. They not only inflicted heavy casualties on the hostile forces, but this technique also confused them to the actual number and positions of their weapons. On 3 occasions, Specialist Caruso turned his machine gun over to his assistant, and with complete disregard for his personal safety, braved intense hostile fire in order to mark the company perimeter with smoke grenades. This enabled invaluable air assistance to be called in. Once more, during the long 4-hour battle, Specialist Caruso left his post. Although wounded, he repeatedly exposed himself to the heavy opposing fire in order to carry urgently needed ammunition to the automatic weapon emplacement 50 meters away. When arriving at his position, Specialist Caruso discovered the weapon jammed and most of the crew wounded. Working rapidly, he disassembled and cleared the weapon, putting it back in working order. He then quickly instructed the men remaining at the position in the machine gun's He then quickly instructed the men remaining at this position in the machine gun's proper use. Assured that their inexperienced men were now capable of handling the situation, Specialist Caruso again braved the intense fire in order to crawl back to his original post. Despite the pain from his wounds, Specialist Caruso continued to man his weapon until the attack was over. His initiative and perseverance during the long battle provided great inspiration for his fellow soldiers and contributed immeasurably to the success of the mission. Specialist for Caruso's unquestionable value in close combat against superior hostile forces is in keeping with the finest traditions of the military service and reflects great credit upon himself, the 1st Infantry Division, and the United States Army. Accepting this honor for Specialist for Henry Caruso Jr. is Melissa Caruso, his cousin.
Good afternoon. Not only was Uncle Henry a relative, but he was my best friend. He went on hospice in the summer of 2021. My fiance and I had the pleasure of taking care of him and his farm. I was blessed to spend 9 months with him. He was so proud even till the end of his journey. Every morning at 4:30, a little girl named Raina Osby sings the Star-Spangled Banner. The first time I showed him, he fell in love. He watched her sing every morning and would always salute at the end. He was such a special man, and I miss him terribly. Thank you.
Captain John E. Elzey, United States Air Force, Vietnam. April 14, 1971, Fayette County, Allegheny County. Awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight as a forward air controller in Southwest Asia on 4 April 1971. On that date, he flew in support of friendly troops in contact with a hostile force. Disregarding intense anti-aircraft fire, he repeatedly dove his unarmed aircraft at the hostile position to mark targets for strike aircraft. Because of his actions, many lives were saved. The professional competence, aerial skill, and devotion to duty displayed by Captain Elzey reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain John E. Elzey.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Needless to say, this is a special day in my life. It's a huge honor to be inducted into the Hall of Valor, something I'd never dreamed about. But it's very humbling to see my name added to this distinguished list of veterans. I've read the citations of the three men represented today, and they were true heroes, and I'm sure their families are very proud of them. But I'm very thankful, first of all, to Soldiers and Sailors Museum, Mr. John McCabe, Mr. Tim Neff, and all their staff put this ceremony together. Soldiers and Sailors have been sponsoring this great award for 60 years, and it's a lot of work, and I truly appreciate that. And of course, we took a tour of this beautiful facility earlier, and Mr. Michael Kraus, who is a curator, took us on a great tour, and what a beautiful facility. I understand this is the largest facility of its kind in the U.S. So thank you guys very much for everything. I'm also thankful for all of you to come and share this honor with me. And I'd like to introduce some of my family sitting on the front row. My lovely wife, June. She's about to, I don't know whether she's about to blush or cry. I'm not sure which. But we've been together for 55 years. She's always been there for me, richer or poorer, as a sickness and health, always there. And I love her very much. Thank you for all you've done for me. You've blessed my life. We had a beautiful family, and a lot of them are sitting right here. And our daughter in the back, Jana, and her husband, Matt Garrett. Between them is our son, Jack, and the rest of these good people are our family. And we're just so thankful that you're all here today. You know, part of this, Mr. John McCabe mentioned that one of the requirements for receiving this award is to be connected with Pennsylvania in some way, and either born, raised, whatever. And I think I fill all the squares in that department. My wife and I were laughing the other day. We do a lot of traveling, and when you meet new people, they say, well, where are you from? And the automatic answer was, without thinking, we're from Pennsylvania. Now, we haven't lived in Pennsylvania for 50 years. We live in South Carolina, and we love it down there, but we're from Pennsylvania. And so I was born in Smithfield, Pennsylvania, which is a little bit south of Uniontown. And Smithfield was in those days, all the older men were retired railroaders, my grandfather being one of them. The younger men, the men my parents' age, were mostly coal miners and with a few farmers mixed in. But what a great place to grow up. I'm always proud to be from Pennsylvania. Hard-working, God-fearing, salt of the earth type people. And so I was always proud to be from Pennsylvania. I graduated from Albert Gallatin High School in 1961. Went to college down the road here, Carnegie Mellon, Carnegie Tech in those days. Graduated in '65 with a degree in mechanical engineering. My first job led me to Youngstown, Ohio. Of course, when I was in college, I was exempt from the draft. And because of my job in engineering and the U.S. Steel, I was exempt also from the draft there. So life is good. I had a good job. I just bought a new car. I thought, I'm going to go for a ride. And I went for a ride around Youngstown. I was about half lost, and I came across a little airport and met a little guy in there, little old guy. He's 74 years old. That doesn't seem too old anymore. But I was 22, and he seemed pretty old at the time. His name was Ernie Hall, a true pioneer in aviation. He knew the Wright brothers. And so he also taught Jimmy Doolittle how to fly an airplane, and he taught me how to fly an airplane just as well, but a little bit later. And so anyhow, I fell in love with flying, and I decided I would like to do that for a living. My problem was, if I quit my job at U.S. Steel, I get drafted. And Vietnam, this is 67, 65, actually 65. Vietnam's starting to heat up a little bit. So I had a plan. I'm going to go to the Air Force, take all the examinations to see if I could qualify as a pilot. And then I'd quit my job, raise my hand, and join the Air Force before the draft board could do anything about it. So that was my plan. Most of my parents didn't think it was a real good plan. My wife didn't think it was a very good plan. We weren't married then. But anyhow, it has worked pretty well. And so I raised my hand. Next thing I knew, I was in the Air Force. And first training program, officer training school. And the best way I can describe OTS, by the way, the military has a bunch of letters to represent almost everything. OTS, Officer Training School, lasts 90 days. You go in one end, you're a civilian, know nothing about the military. 90 days later, you're a second lieutenant, and you still don't know anything about the military. It seems to work in the Air Force because no one ever pays attention to a second lieutenant anyhow. So next training program, pilot training. Pilot training lasts a year. It's pretty challenging, a lot of hard work, but fun. And now Vietnam is starting to heat up. We knew we were going to Vietnam. It was just a matter of when. Most of our instructors had just come back from Vietnam. So we were all ears. We had plenty of questions, asking our instructor, what's it like, what's this? And of course, pilots like to talk, they use their hands a lot and whatever. Some of it's true, by the way. But we had an instructor who was shot down in Vietnam, and he was evading the Viet Cong on the ground. And he said he was so scared. If you've ever had your feel your heart beating? He said, I can hear it beating, and he was afraid the enemy would hear his heart beating and discover him, but obviously he got home safe. One of the instructors, and I still remember this guy well, his name was Major Morris, flew 01s, and I didn't know what that was. So we had, we were asking, what's an 01? He said, I was a forward air controller. I said, well, what's that like? He just smiled and said, it builds character. So I thought, later on I found out that forward air controller was considered to be a pretty hazardous job. And for the reason is that you flew low, slow, and unarmed. And I'm thinking, that's not a real good combination, low, slow, and unarmed. So I found out a way. I'm thinking, if you ever get a chance to volunteer to be an 01 pilot, turn it down. So anyhow, my first assignment was not Vietnam. I flew C-133s, which is a cargo plane. I had a couple interesting missions there, one hauling the Apollo 11 capsule and once with the presidential helicopters. But then the day comes. I get my orders for Vietnam. I looked on the orders, 01. And I'm thinking, ooh, I'm starting to get nervous. I tried not to let on for my wife, but I'm not real excited about being an 01 pilot based on what Major Morris had told us. But I get over there and I changed my mind. Being a forward air controller was a great job. We did fly a little airplane. It was kind of like an overgrown Piper Cub, probably the least impressive airplane in the Air Force inventory. It had rockets under the wings. We had 3 radios in the airplane. And so what is my job? A forward air controller, his only job was to support the troops on the ground. And the Air Force, we all know that a war is won or lost on the ground, the troops fighting the ground war. But we had an opportunity to support these men fighting, and so that was our sole job. I was given an area, actually it was in Cambodia, and that was where I flew. Literally every time I flew over there, I flew in this area, and it was about 100 miles long and about 100 miles wide, roughly speaking. It wasn't a square, but it was all in Cambodia. So after a while, you got pretty familiar with this area. And so what could we do to support the ground troops? Part of the time we did surveillance. Surveillance is just flying around observing. And sometimes that could be pretty routine. I wouldn't say boring, but routine. And so another part of our job is controlling airstrikes. And sometimes these airstrikes would be pre-planned. We would know before we took off, we're going to hit a particular coordinate. It's a known enemy location. So the fighters were already ordered. The target was already approved. Every target had to be approved by somebody, some general in Saigon. And so everything was set up. It was a matter of putting the airstrike in. It became a little more intense when friendly troops were involved. And the reason for that is probably the worst thing that a FAC could do is be to drop bombs on friendly troops. And so that was a prime consideration. We had friendly troops involved. Without sounding too pompous, let me say that the FAC had complete authority in this situation and also complete responsibility if anything went bad. But the reason we had complete authority is that we were the only ones who had the information required to put it all together. We were supporting the guys on the ground, and they're down there in a firefight fighting for their lives. And they knew where their position was, and they knew where the enemy was, but that's, they were busy doing everything else. The fighters, when they showed up to drop the bombs, they're up here at 12,000 feet. The FAC is down here at 1,500 feet. So plenty of times the fighters could not even see the target because they were so high. At 15,000 feet, everything looks the same in Vietnam. So that was our role. We knew where the friendly troops were. We knew where the target was. We also knew that area. So I knew what the altitude of the target. I knew a little bit about the wind, so we would brief the fighters, and it would be something like this. Today our target is a troops in contact, TIC we call them, and the target elevation is 600 feet, the altimeter is 2992, the winds are calm. The bailout area, if you get hit, is to the north. I'll be holding at 1,500 feet north of the target. I want you to fly east to west, break left, and I want you to drop 500-pound bombs first, napalm second. So we told them, and we controlled the airstrike completely. After they would roll in, after the briefing, I would roll in and mark the target with the rockets under my wings, and if I had a good mark, I'd say, hit my smoke. And of course, pilots take pride in not too much verbiage on the radio. So you just said what you had to say. And so I'd say, hit my smoke. A couple seconds later, I would hear the lead guy say, lead rolling in from the east. And I'm flying my airplane, trying to keep the target in sight and the fighters, and if everything looked good, I would say cleared hot, and that means he was allowed to drop his bomb. Now I'm talking to the guy on the ground on another radio, switching back, and he's giving me corrections for where the next bomb should go. So then I go back to the fighters. Now the wingman is rolling in. So you can get an idea of what it's like. It became somewhat intense. I flew 176 missions over there. The good Lord watched over me the whole way. And he still does today, as a matter of fact. But I'm very proud to have been born in Pennsylvania. I'm honored to have served my country, and I'm honored to be here today. Thank you very much.
Sergeant Daniel J. Kuhn, United States Army, Vietnam, August 31, 1970, Fayette County. Awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action on 31 August 1970 in Vietnam. While on reconnaissance operation, Company A came under intense small arms automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenade fire from a large enemy force. Despite being wounded in the initial contact, Sergeant Kuhn continued to expose himself to great danger as he drove his armored personnel carrier to a strategic fighting position and began placing suppressive machine gun fire on the hostiles. When radio communication between the unit commander and the various elements was lost, Sergeant Kuhn immediately began issuing instructions to the maneuvering elements and reporting to higher headquarters. With radio communication having been reestablished, Sergeant Kuhn continued to effectively engage the enemy with machine gun fire. His valorous actions contributed immeasurably to the success of the mission. The bravery and devotion to his duty exhibited by Sergeant Kuhn are in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Accepting this honor for Sergeant Daniel J. Kuhn is Beverly Paul, his sister.
Well, I thought I wrote big enough to do this without my glasses, but apparently not. Let me begin by thanking Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum Trust for having us for the induction of my brother and other veterans into the Joesph A. Dugan Jr. Hall of Valor. I also want to thank Glenn Nielsen of the Vietnam Veterans Incorporated of Fayette County for encouraging me to fill out the application. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Beverly Paul. I am here today, along with family and friends, to honor my brother, Sergeant Daniel J. Kuhn, who served proudly in the United States Army during the Vietnam conflict. During that time, he earned many medals, one being the Silver Star with a gold leaf, which qualified his being placed on the Wall of Valor with so many other deserving veterans. Dan passed away on September 19th, 2021, but probably wouldn't be here if he were still with us because he didn't feel he did anything special. He was just doing his duty and looking out for his fellow soldiers trying to stay alive. He insisted on remaining there for a second tour to keep his younger brother Tom from being sent to that hellhole after receiving word that that was about to happen. After his discharge, he returned to us a changed man, distant, guarded, not as jovial, and somewhat haunted by his experience. During his first few years home, his life unraveled. His marriage dissolved as he turned to alcohol for solace. Nearly 20 years passed till he finally sought help from the Veterans Administration and began his journey to sobriety. During this time, he met a wonderful woman, Marie, who was his saving grace. They later married in Hawaii, and she fought endlessly and tirelessly to get him all the help and support he deserved until she passed in August of 2020. As a result of his sobriety, he began a loving relationship with his two sons, Danny Jr. and Dwight, both in the audience today. He was also blessed with two grandchildren, a granddaughter, Alana, and grandson, Danny, who gave him much joy and focus for the rest of his days. I pray he's finally at peace and free of that gorilla on his back, as he used to refer to it as the anxiety or PTSD would overcome him as it did so many times. He rarely spoke of his experience, but it was quite obvious he was tortured by past events. Excuse me. I come from a family of military veterans. My father served in the Army Air Corps and met my mother after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. She was an island girl and entertained troops with the USO. My three brothers all served in the armed services after graduating high school. As for myself, I'm a lifetime member of the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars Auxiliary. In closing, I'd like to ask you, when given the opportunity, thank a veteran for their service. Let them know you appreciate what they did so that you may enjoy your freedom. And remember, all gave some gave all. Thank you, and God bless America.
Technical Sergeant Harry L. Lee, United States Marine Corps Reserve, World War II, July 3, 1945 through July 23, 1945, Washington County. Awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism and extraordinary achievement in aerial flight while serving as a navigator bombardier of a twin-engine bomber plane in operations against enemy Japanese forces in the Pacific War area from 3 to 23 July 1945. Completing his 20th combat patrol mission during this time period, Technical Sergeant Lee contributed materially to the success of his plane. His courage and devotion to duty in the face of the enemy air operation were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Accepting this honor for Technical Sergeant Harry L. Lee is Donald Lee, his son.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. First and foremost, I want to sincerely thank the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and their staff for creating this wonderful Hall of Valor opportunity for veterans who have distinguished themselves in service of our great nation. My sincerest congratulations to our other three recipients today, Sergeant Kuhn, Specialist 4 Caruso, and Captain Elsie. My only regret is that my father, Tech Sergeant Harry Lee of the United States Marine Corps, is not able to be here to partake in this great honor. He would be so proud to have his service memorialized in such a wonderful way. Like so many others from his generation who served in World War II, my father passed. He passed in 2021 at the age of 96. When World War II broke out, my father was still in high school, and upon graduation in 1942, he enlisted into the Marines shortly thereafter, and by the fall of 1943, he had been assigned to the VMB 612, a B-25 squadron assigned to the Pacific and part of the U.S.'s strategy to island hop and gain territory as it inched closer to Japan and prepared for an invasion of Japan. The VMB 612 sank 40 Japanese ships, lost 10 planes, and lost 39 crew members. The squadron itself was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation and the Navy Unit Citation. My father, Tech Sergeant Harry Lee, and I'm sure the other members of his crew were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with 2 gold stars. My father's assignment on that plane, he was the navigator and bombardier on one of those Mitchell B-25s. My father was most proud of being a Marine. As the saying goes, he was not a former Marine, but a Marine. He stayed true to that motto throughout his life. He was active as a member of the local VFW and the Marine Corps League Detachment in Washington County. Over the years, he participated in many Marine Corps events and was most proud of the continued service he provided to his local community. In particular, he was proud to help with the local Toys for Tots program each year and an event that placed wreaths on veterans' graves each year. And I'm sure he did many more things that I was unaware of. In addition to his Washington County service, he remained actively involved with his World War II unit. He participated in various reunions over the years, and as he did in other activities he was involved in, he became a leader. He somehow managed to be in charge of the database for the Marine Corps, the VMB 612, and he also became the person that managed funds that were collected from his fellow VMB 612 members. As his generation and his unit members became older and less in numbers, my father looked for a way to continue to honor his unit. In 2006, a Marine Corps museum was erected in Quantico, Virginia, along with an expansion of the museum and the grounds in 2013. That museum is magnificent. If you haven't visited it, you should. And it has a beautiful adjoining outdoor grounds that involve a meandering walkway throughout the space that adorns commemorative walls with plaques, and then is also those walkways are lined with commemorative personal bricks. My father, when he was in his early 90s, arranged to use the remaining VMB 612 funds, and probably some of his own money, I'm sure, to have a large VMB 612 unit plaque be attached to one of those walls, where it proudly rests today. And he also purchased bricks for the 39 unit members that sacrificed their lives in World War II. He also reached out to as many of his fellow unit members and their families as he could to offer them the opportunity to purchase bricks of their own. And my father has one of those bricks there as well. Those VMB 612 bricks line the sidewalk just down from the unit plaque. Members of my family took Tech Sergeant Lee to Quantico in 2016 when he was at the ripe old age of 92, and to see the museum and the VMB 612 plaque that he arranged for and all those adjoining bricks. He proudly wore his Marine Corps jacket and his Marine Corps ball cap and gave us a grand tour of that magnificent museum. My father truly embodied the adage of once a Marine, always a Marine. I want to thank all in attendance today who served their country. The USA is a truly grateful nation to those who have served. Additionally, we thank the families of the veterans who have served as they sacrifice as well. I'd like to close with a brief story about the commitments made by families. In the early 90s, our family was celebrating my father's 70th birthday, and my grandmother, my dad's mom, was in attendance. I didn't know what to give my father for his birthday that year, but I came across a family portrait of my dad's family. It was his parents, himself, and his 5 siblings. And I asked my grandmother, I said, "Grandma, do you remember when that photo was taken?" And she said, "I remember exactly when it was taken." She said, "Your dad was a Marine, your Uncle Jim was in the Navy, and your Aunt Ann was a Navy nurse, and they were all about to leave for World War II. Excuse me, and she didn't know, she said, if her entire family would ever be able to be together again. So I suspect over the years, many such photos have been arranged by moms and wives and other family members for the exact same reason. Nevertheless, I'm sure I speak for all in attendance today. Thanks not only to the veterans, but to their families for their service and sacrifice to our country. And thank you to my father's friends and family members in attendance today, particularly 2 members of his Marine Corps detachment from Washington County, Jeff Gallagher, the commandant of that fine organization, and his true friend and next-door neighbor, Sonny Moorhead. And again, thank you to Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall for honoring my father, Harry L. Lee, today. My family is eternally grateful. Thank you.
Now, before we formally conclude everything and I basically release you, I'd like for all of us first to congratulate our 2023 Joesph A. Dugan Jr. Hall of Valor induction class. Join me in applause, please. And also, before we all leave the room, I can see my VVI unit is already lined up. We're going to catch a photo of the inductees before we depart. And at the very end, after my final comments, we're going to have the playing of taps. So please remain in the room until we finish that. So basically, I just want to thank everyone again for attending this special annual program, both personally and virtually. We're very proud of this program and hope you all return in some way, whether in person or virtually in the future. You can learn more about us at soldiersandsailorshall.org. It's where pretty much everything that we do is listed on our website. We're on Facebook. Basically, we're on all the social medias, almost all of them. So you can probably find us just about anywhere, and we'd love for you to do that and spread the word about this wonderful memorial that we have and what we do here. And my staff, I can't say enough. I don't want to take any more time. I have some special comments for them that I will share with them at a more appropriate time. But Tim Neff and the rest of my staff worked diligently and hard, not only on this program, but throughout the year. And nothing could be done without these fine men and women that work here. Thank you very much, my staff. Appreciate you all. So finally, if you will all stand, please, for the playing of taps. And that concludes our ceremony. Tim, do you have any instructions for the people who are staying for lunch? They know? No, I guess, yeah, that doesn't pick, the sound doesn't go down there. Do you have any instructions for the folks who are staying for lunch?
Sure. Just a couple little things to help fluidly. Those who are staying for lunch, we will be heading up to the 3rd floor. There are elevators on either side that you can catch to the 3rd floor. Anybody who ordered plaques, they are available now at the front desk to be picked up. And the plaques that you just saw presented here are now in the Hall of Valor room, which is in the front corner over here. So if you want to stop there to get any photographs or anything like that, you can do that at this time as well. But we are going to bring everybody together that's on stage for one photograph first before we completely dismiss the folks on stage. But other than that, that's all. Thank you all.
One final word of warning, I guess. Yes, we have 2 elevators, and unless you're young and fit or don't have hip problems, use our elevators. The ballroom is above this floor. So when you go to the elevator, sometimes it's surprisingly to see that it says 3rd floor or 3rd level, but we're not just going 3 floors up. We're going about 6.5 floors up. So use the elevator if you choose. Fair warning.